everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Magali, I'm an Oracle Apex developer, and in this tutorial I will show you different approaches you could take to remove that flash, that blink you see for a slight moment from hidden items on page load. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. This is our use case. We have a page with two regions, contact information and app and payment information. On the content information, we have a name text field and an extra request item radio group. By default, this is set to no, and by selecting yes, a comments field appear. Since the default is no, then this comments field is hidden on page load. Then we have a region for payment information where the user can select a payment method and different items appear. For Apple Pay, a text field appears. For debit credit card, then different items appear. And for PayPal, a display only field. Now I'm going to inspect and change my network to 3G, a slow 3G, so that way we can see what the issue we're trying to solve is. I'm going to do a hard reload. And now you can see that as the page is loading, we are looking at our hidden items. We saw our comments, text field, also the debit credit card information, and the display only field. You probably noticed this change after release 21.1. Before, the Apex behavior was to defer the page rendering automatically, which means it hides the content or body of the page until it finishes loading and the JavaScript initialization has been completed. I read in a comment from Tim Kimbrell that this change was made in order to improve the rendering speed of the pages, meaning we see our content as it's being loaded. So the amount of time we get to see our hidden items depends on how long the browser takes to download the resources. Like in this case, I'm having a slow 3G network, then we got to see our hidden items longer. There are many ways to solve this issue. One of the solutions is by going into your page and under appearance on template options, you'll see this option that says deferred page rendering. As I explained before, this will hide all the body of the page until it's fully loaded. So if we click here, save and run our page, I'm gonna do a hard reload again for us to see the behavior. Now, something you need to take in consideration is that with this approach, we're going to be giving the user the perception that the page is taking longer to load, as none of the regions or items are being displayed, as we've seen at the moment. We didn't see any blink, we didn't see any of our hidden items, and everything appeared in the page at once. If you would not like to provide this UI experience to your user, then there are other approaches we can take. The next approach I'm about to share with you is my favorite, as it does not jeopardize the rendering of the page and allows me to have the visibility statuses pre-calculated, like in this example. I'm gonna do a hard reload again. And as you can see, we get to see our payment information region, and we do not see our hidden items being displayed. This approach requires for us to create containers for our items. So right now, I'm gonna go to our editable page, and again, we have the same payment information, and we're gonna recreate this solution. So let's go ahead and edit our page. And the first step will be, as I mentioned before, create our containers. For that, we're gonna use a static content and place it below the payment method and call this Apple Pay container. For template, I'm gonna select blank with attributes. And then since this is a container for the Apple Pay, I'm gonna drag this payment email item. And we're gonna do the same for the other selections. So for the here will be card, container. Again, the template will be blank with attributes. I'm gonna go ahead and drag our items, which will be name on card, card number, CVV, and zip code. And then one more for PayPal. So call it PayPal container. Now we'll need a container for each of the items that you're trying to hide. So again, blank with attributes, as we do not want any borders to display. Now that we have created our containers, the next step will be to create some hidden items where we're going to store our pre-calculated visibility statuses. So for that, on the region body, create your page item, and we're going to create one for each container that we just created. So there will be one for Apple Pay, one for card container, and the other one for PayPal. So let's call this P5 render Apple info, and this item will be hidden. And then we're gonna create two more like this, just gonna duplicate. And the next one will be render card info, which will make a reference to the card container, and one last one, which is render PayPal info. All these items are set to hidden. Now in our pre-rendering, I have a process that is getting dynamically my payment methods ID. I will use this for my dynamic actions, as depending on what payment method is selected, these containers need to show. So right now here I'm getting the payment method, the ID for debit credit card. I have this package, payment method utils, where I'm just doing a select ID. And I'm storing each of the values on its corresponding item. For card, debit card will be in P5 card PM. For Apple Pay, Apple PM, and for PayPal, PayPal PM. Now that we have created our hidden items, we're gonna do another process where we are going to set our visibility statuses. So we're gonna do pre-calculate visibility statuses. All right, and on the PL SQL code, we're gonna do the following. All right, so in here I'm doing different checks. The first one is checking if the payment method is null, meaning that I don't have any default value set for that item. Then I want all my containers to be hidden. So P5 card info, U dash hidden, P5 render Apple info, U hidden class, and render PayPal info, U hidden class. Now I'm using this U dash hidden class that I got from Universal Theme. If you go Universal Theme, on the reference, there's one that says content modifier. And if you scroll down a bit in here, you will find this class U-hidden. This is the same as having display none. If you do not wish to use this class, you can always create one either in your file or inline. For example, in this case, I created one that is CC test, and I have added the display none. And then you can just make a reference to it on your pre-calculation. So for example, if I were to use my class, I would just specify it here. For the purposes of this video, I'll be using U-hidden, which is the one provided by the Oracle team, by the Oracle Apex team. Okay, all right, so then after checking for the payment method is null, then all the regions are hidden, as I do not have a predetermined value. Else, if the payment method selected on page load is card number, then for the card info container, I will just add an empty string, as I do not want to add any class to it. I just want it to show. However, for the other two, render Apple info container, we are going to set a class. The same goes for the payment method Apple payment. Since I want my Apple payment information to show, then I only add the U-hidden class to the card info and PayPal info, and the same goes for PayPal container. All right, so we say that. And now I'm gonna run the page so you can see what is happening. But before doing that, we're gonna need to go to each of these containers, and we're going to use substitution strings to dynamically set our CSS class. For that, on each of the containers, we're gonna go under appearance, and on CSS classes, we're gonna add the name of our hidden items that we created that contain the class. So the first one will be for Apple Pay, and our item is called P5 render Apple info. So in here, do ampersand, the name of your item, and a dot at the end. Then we're gonna do the same for card container, CSS class, ampersand, and then the name of your hidden item. And one more for PayPal, and I'm gonna do P5 render PayPal info. All right, so save, and let's see what's happening. What are we doing in here? I'm just gonna put back my page to normal. So as you can see, in a slow network, and I do a hard reload, as the page is loading, we do not see any of the hidden items, which is what we want to do. However, since we still need to add the functionality to show on change, we're gonna do that in a minute, but first I wanted to show you what is happening. So I'm gonna go ahead and select this, and I'm gonna go to each container. This should be for the Apple Pay container. I'm just gonna add really quick a static ID so we can identify it. So I'm gonna call it Apple Pay container. Gonna see what is happening with our hidden items. So I'm just gonna move my connection, my network to normal again, and inspect. So in here we have a row, and we have our static content Apple Pay container. Now if you notice here on class, there is the class I just added on my pre-rendering process, U-hidden, meaning that dynamically with this item right here and my pre-rendering process, I'm setting dynamically the CSS class to the entire region. What now we need to do is make our dynamic actions so that we can remove this class when we want to show Apple Pay, or add it if we want to hide it. For that, we'll go back to our page, and on dynamic actions on change, create a new one, and let's call it show hide regions. And the event will be changed, and the selection will be the item payment method, as that's the one that is driving the show and hide of the regions. Okay, and then the first true action would be to, if you do, okay, we're gonna do Apple Pay container first. So we're gonna do show Apple Pay container. On the action, we're gonna select remove class. Remember, at the moment we have the U-hidden class added to all of our items. However, we want to remove it so that we can show it. For that, we're gonna do remove class. In the class, we're gonna specify the same class you have added on your pre-rendering process, and under affected elements, we're gonna select region and choose the corresponding one, which will be Apple Pay container. Then we're also going to add a client-side condition where we want this to be triggered if the item payment method has the value of Apple Pay. For that, I'm gonna make a reference to my other hidden item that I showed you before, where I'm doing the payment ID. as a in here. So I'm just gonna copy here. So if the item payment method is the same as Apple payment ID, so substitution string here again, then I want this action to execute. Then we're gonna create a true action for hiding the region. So hide Apple Pay container. Action, in this case, since we want to hide it, we need to add back the class. We're gonna do add class, and on class, again, the name of our class. And on affected elements, again, region, and select the appropriate one, Apple Pay container. Remove fire initialization, and client side condition. Again, I need to make sure that the item selected is different than Apple Pay, so either debit, credit card, or PayPal. So item is not the value that I'm going to specify, which is Apple payment. So I'm going to go ahead and run the page to show you what is happening before adding the rest. So in here, since Apple Pay is my default, then the text field appears, email address. And as you can see here, when we inspect the item, we do not have any class. However, if I were to select debit credit card, you can see here that we are adding the class uHidden. I will show later in the video why I like this approach and why I recommend using containers. So the same goes in here, since it's PayPal and it's not Apple Pay, then this uHidden class is added. If I select Apple Pay again, then that class gets removed. I'm gonna slow my network again, so you can see that when we do a hard reload, none of the other items will be visible while the page is loading. There you go, so no hidden items appear. And Apple Pay option is selected, and then my text field appears in there. So I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of the actions for you to see, which will be the same. Alright, so I gone ahead and added the rest of the actions. Show card container, which is the same process of action remove class, add the class name, select my region card container, and then add my client side condition that the item value has to be card PM, the card ID. The same goes for, just gonna rename this really quick to PayPal container in this case. And then we have the hide option, the hide action, Apple Pay container, which is item is not the same as Apple ID. The same goes for the hide card container, where we specify a client side condition, and the rest for PayPal. Alright, so now if I run my page and slow the network again, do a hard reload, then none of my items, hidden items, are displaying, so it means that slide flash blink is not showing in my screen. But if I choose debit or credit card, then each section is shown respectively. So again, I'm gonna go ahead and look at my other containers just to check and for you to see. So debit credit card has a uHidden class as expected, and the same goes for PayPal region uHidden. If I select debit credit card, which will be this one, then that class disappears as expected. Now, if you do not need any pre-calculated values, any pre-calculated visibility statuses, and you just need to hide an item on page load, you could do the following approach. So I'm gonna show you here. We are going to take the approach of adding inline display none. So in this case, we have the contact information region with the extra request set to no as default, where we just hide the item, and if you select yes, then that shows. We're gonna take the same approach of adding a container. So I'm gonna edit that page and show you really quick how to do this. So in here, you can see in the layout that I have added a container for this text field that I wanted to hide on page load. And in that container, I have added Inline CSS right here on advanced on custom attributes. I have added style equal display none. And then on my dynamic actions, you only need to create on change, show or hide text field, or any item that you're making reference to. Add your client side condition. In this case is if the item value extra request is yes, then I want to show that item, that text field that is inside my container. And if that's not true, then I just want to hide it. Also, if you do not want to add an inline CSS, you can always do what we did in the previous example, where you create a CSS class and add it under appearance and do the add or remove class as we did before. Now, this show and hide actions that we're doing, each of these actions is calling the jQuery methods hide and show respectively, that automatically add or remove the display none at the region level. So I'm gonna run this page so we can see that, and I'm going to go ahead and inspect. So on no, gonna look for I'm gonna select yes first so we can inspect that. So if I go to my container right here, right now, because I have S request selected to yes, then it's showing. If I select no, you'll see here, I'm gonna make this bigger. In here, my inline CSS that we added in the custom attributes, display none, is added automatically. If I select yes, then that style is removed. This is thanks to the jQuery methods that we're calling on our dynamic action show, on our action show and hide. So this show is removing the styling I have added, and the hide is adding that inline CSS. So this is a good approach in case you do not have you do not need to calculate visibility statuses, and you just want to hide your items on page load. Now you're probably asking, why do I need to use a wrapper, or why do I need to use a container instead of only adding display non-styling to each item? This is because the styling will depend on the Apex markup, and depending on which item you are using, the display non-styling is added in different places. So I'm going to show you an example. So we have a contact information field and we have this text field. I'm showing it as default. Now I'm going to show you what I've done, where if I go to the page and inspect this in the text field, we have the dynamic action, show hide text field, and is add and remove class. So I add a class if I want to hide it, and remove it if I want to show it. Now if I go ahead and gonna inspect this, if I select yes, then my item is showing. Now if I select no, you can see that the input element is gone, but you can still see your label. This is because the class is not being added at a field container, is being added only into the input. As you can see here, in the input you see the class u-hidden. Depending on what item you are using, then this could be added on different places. In this case, because we have a text field, then the label that is outside that still displays. That's why when using a container or a wrapper, you know for sure that all the item itself will be contained on your class display none. You could also say, oh, but I can use jQuery selectors to target the Apex internal markup. I would suggest against that, as you do not want to be depending on the Apex markup, as it could change anytime in the future. So my best recommendation would be to do your containers for your fields and add your either CSS class dynamically or do inline CSS. So that's our tutorial for today. We look at 3 different ways you can remove the flash, the blink, or just looking at your hidden items on page load. We saw on how we can bring back the Apex legacy behavior of deferring the page rendering. We also look how we can do CSS classes at a region level dynamically with pre-calculated visibility statuses. And we also looked at inline display none approach. I hope this video is helpful to you, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!